Used Car Salesman's Guide to Selling. Now, this is a presentation that I put together quite a while ago, and I've kind of refreshed it a little bit for today. But when I started working in conference services, I was at a university, the University of Arizona in Tucson. I got hired because I had a really great operational background, because I had leadership skills, because I knew a little bit about business and finance, but not because I knew anything at all about marketing and sales. And so I really had to learn a lot of those things. And while there's a lot of stuff out there that you can look at and learn, there's whole degree programs in college that you can take on marketing. Sales is not one of those things. Like, you don't go to university and find Sales 101 in the course catalog at the business school. They sprinkle in elements of the process throughout courses, but it's really a skill set that's hard to pick up. And for a lot of people, it's also the most intimidating thing that you have to do. If you're like me and you're an introvert to a degree, and the idea of, small talk and cocktail hour and those kinds of things just terrify you, the idea of figuring out how to then go out and do sales or make cold calls or, facilitate someone from a process of interest all the way to closing, again, can be very daunting. And so I had to work very hard at coming up with a methodology for figuring out the right way to do this. And I developed a process, a format for doing it, that is based on a model, not necessarily of used car sales, but it's a great example that leads us into that. So I don't want anyone to feel like I'm selling snake oil today or anything like that. I'm using it as kind of a thematic exercise to help us understand the way that you can build a framework for sales and then repeat that framework over and over and over again to try to give yourself the best possible chance of success during the process. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about marketing versus selling, because again, they are two distinctly different things. And so we're going to touch and just remind people what marketing is a little bit. Go over the 4 P's of marketing, but then we'll go over the 4 P's of selling, which is something maybe that you haven't seen before, because it's kind of the way I developed a framework around this stuff. And finally, we'll talk about the steps in the sales process and the things that you need to think about at each stage of the sales process in order to, again, move that sale from interest all the way through to closure and follow-up. So the first thing to remind everyone is kind of the difference between marketing and sales. Chuck has his saying that he likes to use, whereas marketing builds the tools for sales to fight the fight. And that, I think, is wholly appropriate. The marketing people are working behind the scenes, and the sales people are out there then implementing the tools that marketing has provided for them. I've had one I've used over the years quite a lot that also just kind of frames the difference, where selling is getting rid of something that you've got, and marketing is having something that you can get rid of. So again, when you come up with a concept for a product or service or whatever, you now have something that you can sell to the world, and the marketing people figure out how it is that you sell to the world whatever product or service it is that you came up with. Whereas the salespeople are the ones that are feet on the ground actually interacting with customers. And again, that could be, global customers anywhere in the world. It could be individuals walking in the front of a retail store. It could be anyone that then you're trying to make that transactional arrangement where they're going to buy your product and service at the end of the day and walk out the door with it. And so again, they require very different skill sets. I would never pretend that I have anywhere near the knowledge that Allie has in relation to marketing. I'm good at, coming up with ideas, and I'm really good at reviewing stuff that comes out and, asking questions and things like that. But Allie's the expert when it comes to marketing because she has the background and the expertise in that area. By the same token, I know Allie probably at the end of the day would give Corey and I the nod in terms of what we do in a sales arena, because that's what we do on a regular basis. And we've developed skills and knowledge and have an expertise around those things that translate to the work that we do. And so in each of those cases, you have to be prepared to learn what you need to learn. You need to strengthen those skills as you go. And then you need to rely on your experience, the things that have happened, to adjust and modify the knowledge and the skills that you have so that you can increase the probability of success over time. But here's the thing, right? You can't just have the marketing department living in one isolated bubble and the sales department living in another isolated bubble, because they are totally dependent on one another. You have to be communicating well. You have to understand the strategies that marketing has developed when you're selling a product. And likewise, you have to understand what salespeople are hearing and feeling and experiencing with customers in order to modify and adjust your marketing strategies. And so there has to be a way for this to come together. Now, again, for a lot of you that are managing venues, you might be both of those bubbles, right? You are the marketing person and the salesperson. And oftentimes, again, it's easier for us to fall back to the marketing skills and abilities because they're more comfortable. They're things that you have better control over, right? You decide what goes in the publication, and you decide when it goes out, and you decide what your tagline is going to be, and you decide what the price is going to be. And those are all things that are comfortable and more safe. Whereas with sales, you can't really control much of anything, right? Customers are going to do what they're going to do, and you simply have to work with them and adapt on the fly to figure out what's the best way that I can close this deal, get them to sign on the dotted line, and move on to the next sales opportunity. And so again, you need to make sure that you're working really well with yourself in that process, that you are constantly challenging yourself to remember, am I in the marketing phase of this process, or am I in the sales phase? And if I'm in the sales phase, then I need to be implementing sales-oriented activities. Now, as a quick reminder, here are the 4 Ps of marketing. And again, this is taught in every business school across the country and hasn't really updated in 50 years. There are 4 Ps to marketing. There's product, what are we going to sell? There's price, what do we need to charge for it? There's promotion, how do we let people know about it? And there's placement, where do we sell it? And that, again, makes a lot of sense, right? We've come up with an idea. We need to figure out what we're going to charge for it. We need to tell people now that we've got a product, and then we need to figure out who the right audience is for us to serve. And an important thing to remember is that marketing strategies are applied globally. And that's not to say that they're one size fits all, right? If you're selling a product that's targeted at the teen demographic, obviously you're going to create strategies that reach out to that demographic, but you are trying to then blanket all teens at once, right? You're trying to grab as many of them as possible and make them aware of your product and lead them down the pathway of interest so that they might engage in the sales relationship. And so you've got to remember that you're doing this for wider audiences, which is why marketing things are more global, more general, trying to stay away from some of the in-the-weeds details or the sales-oriented parts of the plan. So let's use an example. We could look at a copy machine. Let's say we created a copy machine and we wanted to now sell it. First, we've got to decide on the price. What are the margins that we want to achieve on our copy machine that we've developed? With the features and benefits that it has, and what are the different pricing terms that we might have. And like in the copy machine world, that could be a straight buy where you buy it directly. It could be a lease to buy where you pay a lease payments for a period of time, and then you own that machine. Or it could just be a straight lease where you plan to have it for 3 years and then upgrade to the newest model and continue to lease out there. You have to figure out how to promote it. Are we going to do direct mail? Are we going to do print or digital advertising? Will we go to trade shows, TV spots, social media? There's all sorts of different ways that you can get awareness out there about your new copy machine. And then placement, like where are you going to actually implement those things? So who are the appropriate demographics for a copy machine, right? It's probably your business and your education segments. It's professionals that use them. But there's also maybe a home market depending on what type of machine you bought. If it's the giant $25,000 copy machine, you're probably not selling that to a home audience. But if it's more the desktop variety, or there's an offshoot, maybe you've built 3 or 4, then you have a home market as well. And those strategies are going to look very different, right? In terms of what you're going to sell for the $20,000 product versus what you're going to sell for the $69 desktop that's going to sit in someone's home. And you figure out who your audience is, and then you find the promotion strategies that get it to them in a price range that hopefully is what they are looking for and can afford. So that's the basics of marketing and the 4 Ps. And I wanted to kind of move through that quickly just to set the stage for all of that. But let me take a quick pause and ask Corey if there are any questions that have come in so far.
Nope, no questions, Joel.
Perfect, then I will keep rolling along. All right. So here's a way of translating the 4 Ps into a sales setting. And I'm going to use auto sales as an example because it's something that I know every single one of us are familiar with. Now, if I was live, I would ask everyone to ask themselves, how many people really like shopping for a new or used car? and there'd be like 2 or 3 people that are sadistic and raise their hand that for some reason really enjoy the car shopping experience. And I'm not talking like Carvana or something like that, where you can now just order it online and go to the vending machine and put in your golden coin. I'm talking the old-fashioned go to the dealership and talk to someone that's waiting for you there in a row with 3 or 4 of them lined up to take the next the next customer that comes through the door, and help you find the car that's right for you. Most of us, we don't like this process because again, it's invasive. Someone's trying to get us to do something that maybe we don't want to do. A car is a big purchase, right? I mean, oftentimes you're spending $15, $20, $30, $40,000 on a vehicle. And so depending on your lifestyle and budget. And so that's a big commitment to make for someone out there. And you really, it can be a push and pull exercise. So again, I'm using it to help illustrate that in order to be successful in an environment like that, you have to have a structure, a foundation. And in auto sales, there is one, actually, that's very clearly used by people in that arena. I had a friend whose dad used to sell vehicles, new vehicles, used, new, whatever. And there was a very specific way that they evaluated customers that came through the door. And this is it right here. Here's the strategic elements of their sales plan. Everyone that walked through the door at a car dealership fit into one of these 4 categories in terms of what they were most specifically sensitive to. For some people, it's price. Some people are not going to pay more than X dollars. I'm not going to walk out and pay more than $22,000 for a vehicle, no matter how nice it is or what you try to throw at me. That's my ceiling on it. And so if I'm a price person, a salesperson wants to figure that out so they know how to negotiate and work with me throughout the process. Some people in auto sales are percentage people. They're really sensitive to giving away money, the interest that they're paying on money that they borrow. And so for them, it's all about what's the best interest rate or a manageable interest rate that I can get over the life of my loan. For some people, it's about making a monthly payment. So it's less about the overall price or what they're going to pay in interest, but can this fit within my budget? Am I going to be able to afford, on top of everything else that I pay each month, the ability to make this monthly payment for the car? And finally, for some people, honestly, it's about what can I get out of this process? I don't really care about the numbers. What are you going to throw in and make me feel special as a customer? And so it's the perks that I can get that dealers will throw in as a part of this. And the important thing to remember about sales and how it differs from marketing is that sales strategies are applied individually, right? There really is no one size fits all for every customer that walks through the door, because everyone's approaching that purchase usually from a different perspective in terms of what they need, what they're trying to accomplish, and what they need to get out of it. And ultimately then what they're sensitive to in terms of you're trying to implement strategies to help them feel good about making a purchase. So this is how auto sales work. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go a little bit behind the scenes and talk a little bit more about why this works for people in the sales business. So I'm going to switch to the right board here for just a second, and we're going to go ahead and just make sure that give me a thumbs up that we're seeing my right board. Okay, so my friend, his dad, who worked in auto sales, told me that what they would do when they got a customer finally into the office and they were starting to talk terms, is that they kind of had a mental grid on their piece of paper that they were working with. Some of you may have had this experience. I know I have. I remember when he explained it to me, I said, I totally understand what's going on now. Imagine that they have, and sorry for my non-straight lines, but I'm doing the best I can with a mouse. Imagine that they've taken that piece of paper and they've broken it into 4 grids. And on this quadrant, these are the people that are sensitive to price. On this quadrant over here, these are the people sensitive to percentage. Over here, we've got the people that are sensitive to payment. And over here, we've got the people that are sensitive to perks. Now, again, this is not to say that everybody only falls into one bucket, right? People usually have sensitivities to all of these things. But in conversation, when they're walking you around the lot, they're asking you questions about how much you make, again, an invasive question, or whether you have a budget, or what you're kind of looking for, or why you're in the market for a new car. They're trying to flesh out which of these buckets, these quadrants, do you fit in. And when you get back to the office then, and they're ready to actually start talking to you, they're going to use their knowledge of who they think you are, and they're going to write on the piece of paper in the quadrant in which you belong. which may seem weird because you're like, they've got this whole paper, and most of us are like, why wouldn't you start at the top and write your numbers up here? But they may, if you're a payment person, they may go, hey, you know what? Okay, I can offer you this vehicle for $18,000. And again, sorry for my writing, and I can give it to you for 6% over 72 months, right? And that's the way that, and they'll write it in that part of the paper. And you're like, again, why are we writing it down there? It makes no sense. They don't explain it to you. But there's a reason for this, because they work with you and they kind of hit it in, and you say, you know, actually, I think I'm, you know, maybe I do 17.5. Anyways, they write numbers, and then they always have to go see their person, right? They're always like, okay, well, let me go see my person. And they leave the room, and you're like, oh, now what's going on? And they leave the room and they're off to talk to their person. What they're doing is they're giving this piece of paper to an accountant, essentially, that is running numbers to say, what's the optimal way that we can find an agreement here between maybe the 18K that the dealer said and the 17K that the person said, or the payment of, you know, 349 or whatever it is. And they're running numbers really quickly, and they're going to come back with a new offer out there. And because of this shorthand, the salesperson doesn't even have to explain to the customer who this customer is. They know, because it's in the bottom right quadrant of the paper, that this is a payment person. And so the numbers they're going to focus on for the next wave of negotiations are payment numbers. And so they just walk by, because normally in busy car dealerships, this person might be doing 4 or 5 or 6 of these at a time. And so they just drop the paper on the desk, no conversation is needed. Person looks at the numbers and says, okay, here's the offer. Guy, you know, goes and gets a cup of coffee or whatever, comes back in a couple of minutes, picks up the piece of paper with the new offer, comes back in the room and says, I talked to my person, and boy, do I have a deal for you. Right? Again, we've all been through this experience before, and you're like, what the heck just happened out there? They come in with a new set of numbers. Now, sometimes in the middle of this process, it may shift, and someone may go, you know, I'm feeling okay here, but now I'm a little nervous about the percent I'm paying. And so they may go back and they may rewrite numbers over here and say, okay, now it's 7.5, and it's, you know, 5%, and so on and so forth, and take it back to their person again. I mean, I've been through times where they've been back to the person 3 or 4 times before we finally reach agreement, but they're using this universal language around their model. Their model is, let me identify what this person's most comfortable, sensitive thing is, and then let me focus on trying to meet that need, because if I can meet that need, I have the greatest chance of success in making the sale. Now, again, if you say I'm only paying 12 for a car that's worth 25, you're probably not getting anywhere there. But in this process of negotiation, they try to drive us down to the end. And so it's a framework that's repeatable, that everybody understands, that they can do over and over and over again. So let me switch back to the presentation here. And let me just confirm we're back to seeing my screen. Perfect. All right. So that's the behind the scenes of how it works out there. Now, let me give you a real life example for me and my wife when we bought our first vehicle out there. So when we bought our first vehicle as a newly married couple, it was a 1997 Pontiac Grand Am. It was taupe in color, it was beautiful, had great power, 6-cylinder. It was an awesome car. Don't laugh, I know Pontiacs don't exist anymore, but I loved that Grand Am. It was like our first real total R car. We went out to look, and the car that we selected was $16,000 total price. Keep in mind, this was the late 90s. It was offered for an interest rate of 7% for 60 months. Keep in mind, it was the late 90s. Interest rates were very different then. The payment was going to be $316.82, and the dealership was going to throw in a desert package, because here in Tucson, Arizona, you got to have tinted and the extra air and all the different things that come with the desert package. Keyless remote entry, that was really big back in the late 90s. That was, you know, new wave. And a free tank of gas, right, which they always throw in. But those were the perks. So you got my price, you got my percentage, you got my payment, you got my perk. And the total payments on that were going to be a little over $19,000. Now, my wife and I had gone into this knowing that we were probably able to afford maybe $260, $270 a month for a payment. With everything else, again, we were young. I was working in my entry first job. We were trying to keep this within our total budget, and the sales person figured that out very quickly, that we were payment people. And I remember he was right in the bottom right corner of the piece of paper when he was doing it. I'm like, why are you doing that? I know now, because I've learned from someone why they were doing that. So he said, okay, I'm going to talk to my person. Left the room, went and talked to the person, and came back with a new offer and said, here's what we can do for you. Still $16,000 for the car. We'll go 8% for 72 months. Your payment is now $280.53 per month. And in addition to what we were already throwing in, we're going to throw in a 6-disc CD changer. Again, it was the late 90s, don't judge. It went in the trunk. It was really cool, right? You put 6 in at once. And we were like, okay, that's still a little bit more that we wanted to pay, but with the 6-disc CD changer, which we knew was probably a $500 or $600 option, which for the dealer means it was like 120 or whatever. We were happy, and we went ahead and signed on the dotted line. But look what the dealership did in that process. The total of payments went up by almost $1,200 across the life of the loan. And if we had just stuck to the loan, we would have given the dealer $1,200 more for that car. But we were happy. We walked away satisfied that they had met our goals of having a payment that we could afford, the car that we wanted at a price that we wanted, and we signed on the dotted line. Now, some people feel like this is sneaky when people do things like this. And the reality is that it's not. This is the way that the sales process works. If you can have a satisfied customer, that is the goal of the sales process. It may not always be about the lowest bottom line number that you see on a page. There are often other things that people are considering as they go ahead and do this. And so again, it's a framework that's repeatable, that you can do over and over, that you can teach other people and keep everyone on the same page about how it is that you're selling the product that you have. So again, I will stop there really quickly and just see if there are any questions that have popped up so far. Nope, I'm seeing a no. All right, I will keep on rolling. Hopefully that means I'm doing a good job explaining everything to everyone. All right. So in using this illustrative example, what I did early in my career was then I tried to develop a 4 Ps concept for conferences and events. Because again, I recognize the importance of trying to figure out what does someone that's coming to me trying to book a piece of business. And again, planners, if we've got planners on the webinar today, I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. I'm not trying to give away trade secrets. I mean, you know you're being negotiated with when it happens. But I'm trying to illustrate for venues and people that may be new to the sales world that there needs to be a way of thinking about serving your needs, finding out what's important and giving it to you, because oftentimes we tend to take a marketing approach to sales, which means that we start our sales process with the things we are most proud of. Look at this beautiful new renovated space. Look at this high-end catering function that we can do. Look at this state-of-the-art technology that we have, and you're trying to book a youth camp for 200 people. They're going to meet on a field and want the lowest possible food options out there. I'm not serving you if all I do is talk about all these wonderful things, and you just want to be like, give me the base price and tell me what I can do for my youth camp out there. And so again, it's important to remember that marketing and sales are different, and you have to meet people where they're at. So my 4 Ps for conference and events look like this: price, which is the cost of the individual services, or it could be the cost of the total package out there at the end of the day. Performance, which is the method of service delivery. So how am I going to provide service to you? Do I have enough staffing? Do I have the right equipment? Do I have the ability to meet your special requirements and things that you have? Sometimes it's physical attributes, the location we're in. So again, I ran a conference program in Tucson, Arizona in the summer. It was sometimes 110 degrees. Some people just were never going to come meet here, and I had to accept that location was one of those things I couldn't control, because for some people it was all about being in the mountaintop setting where it's 72 degrees, or being in a downtown urban setting, whatever it is. So sometimes it's that, or sometimes it's facility requirements. You know, do you have the specific spaces? Do you have a performance venue that has 2,000 with a stage, or can you put 30,000 in a football stadium, or do you have enough beds to have my 3,000 people meet overnight? Those kinds of things, where oftentimes as a campus or university, I sometimes benefited from those things. And finally, the 4th P, which is one I think is often overlooked, is people, which is the reputation or characteristics of the person who is doing the selling that's out there. Because oftentimes, sales is very much about who you are being sold from. We've all, again, going back to auto sales, had that person that the minute they walk up to you and start in, you're just like, ugh, I can't deal with you. Because whatever it is, there's just not a connection that's happening there. And in conferences and events, it's even more important that there be a connection, because you are going to be trusting your event, whether it's 1 day or 3 weeks, to an individual to make sure that it comes off seamlessly for things that are completely out of your control. The space, the food, the lighting, the technology, the guest interaction, all those things, you're relying on someone else, and you want to have trust and confidence in the person that's doing that for you. So these were the 4 Ps that I came up with. And as a reminder, each sale then is made based on addressing the individual needs and concerns of each customer. So if Allie is bringing me a group and Corey is bringing me a group, I can't just throw the same response template at both of them and expect I'm going to have success unless they have perfectly matching events. I have to consider what Allie's needs are and tailor my response and my proposals and my interactions to her. And I have to do the same thing with Corey. And again, it may mean that I don't showcase all of the wonderful things that I'm super proud of and happy about, because they may be completely irrelevant to one of those people. I need to focus on what's important to them. And there we go. So let's talk about what kind of groups I always felt fit into these things. And again, I encourage you to kind of come up with your own process at the end, but this is the way I looked at it. So for me, the groups that were very much price sensitive were athletic camps and religious groups and community gatherings. These were people on a budget that were looking for, you know, the best possible rate and price that they could get. And again, I don't want to offend anyone, but there are athletic coaches out there that would sleep their kids in a cardboard box if it meant they could save $2 on their nightly rate at an institution. And so again, if I was working on trying to land one of these pieces of business, I sharpened my pencil, I got to work, and I tried to make it the best deal that I possibly could, which meant maybe I discounted a little bit, or I gave them a better rate that maybe I gave somebody else who wasn't as concerned about price. And again, some people feel that that's wrong or maybe not ethical. Again, there is a law of supply and demand out there. That is again taught in all business schools and economic courses, that again, if people walk away satisfied, that's the ultimate goal. It's not necessarily about making sure that it's equitably applied across every single person out there. An airline seat is a perfect example of that. Some people pay full freight, some people are smart, savvy shoppers and get it at a reduced rate. These days, some people buy into basic economy and have to go to the back of the plane, but whatever it is, people find what they're satisfied with and do it. On the performance end of things, these were corporate or industry trade events or government programs, because usually these were the planners that came in with the 10-page or 12-page, or in one case, I remember one that was like a 56-page specifications document of everything that was needed that they had to do in order for me to be able to host their event. I remember I had one event I lost because it was the International Society of Jugglers, and they wanted to meet on our campus and use our performance venue, but we had to allow fire juggling to occur, and I could not get my campus theater, my performance venue, to sign off on fire juggling. And so ultimately I wasn't able to land that piece of business, but performance was key, right? If I can't meet your specs, if I don't have the technology or the space or the equipment or the staffing to make it happen, you're probably gonna go somewhere that can. Physical attributes. These are social events. Like weddings and reunions and things like that. I mean, they're looking for a very specific look and feel for the kind of event that they're holding, and either you have it or you don't. And if you don't take it personally, just move on to the next people that maybe are satisfied by this. It's the performing arts, because oftentimes they have very specific needs around the space that they have, and it can be educational technology programs. Maybe it's STEM-based and we need labs, access to labs. Maybe it's computer-based and we need the computer labs, whatever it might be. Sometimes some groups are very much oriented towards physical attributes. And finally, people personality. And for me, these were oftentimes the long-term, the multi-year, or the cyclical programs, the ones that would come back over and over and over again. Oftentimes, again, price, performance, those are all important to those people. But what they really wanted was to know, you know what, if I bring this group to the University of Arizona, is Joel going to take care of me, not just for 1 year, but for all the years that I'm going to be there, or every third year when I come back? You know, is Joel going to be there to make that happen? And so oftentimes, while the first 3 are important, it's more about really working hard to sell yourself to that person. Let them know who you are, let them know what you're committing to in the process of booking them there, and then delivering on that. Like when in year 1, when they're there, you got to show up and you got to be present, and you got to make sure that the trust that they placed in you is fulfilled, or they may move on to another venue for the future. So the key to success is trying to figure out which box to fit that customer into, and then focusing on meeting the customer's needs in that specific area. Because if you don't do that, if you just go with what you think is important to you, what's really super about your venue, you may be completely missing the goal of helping someone understand how you can meet their specific needs. And lots of time, again, it seems so common sense, and I've seen so many examples on consults and places where I've gone, where people are like, well, here's what we roll out when someone gives us a bid, and you look through it and you go, it's either too general or it's too focused on what's important to them and not really focused on what's important to the customer. All right. Let me talk a little bit about an example related to people, because I can't stress enough how important it is to sell yourself in the process. I know a lot of people are shy about that. Again, I'm an introvert, so believe me, these are things that took me work and do that. But I want to tell you a story about how I sold a $15 million piece of business and counting with a banana. And again, it's one of those things that I'm not a genius. I'm not the world's greatest salesperson. Believe me, I struggle with it still today. I don't like picking up the phone and making cold calls. But sometimes you get lucky and you think the right way. And again, my focus here was on I need to sell myself, and it worked out. So we were going to try to steal away the U.S. National Chamber of Commerce's Winter Institute. Every winter in December, January, they hold a week-long institute where people come for, it used to be 6 years, now I think it's 4 years in a row, and they become certified chamber executives. They get the letters after their name, they can sit for the exam, and this is the education and training that they get. And it had been at the University of Oklahoma, in Norman, Oklahoma, at their Kellogg Center, which is a very nice, beautiful facility, for like 15 years. But they were unhappy with the weather in Norman, Oklahoma in December, January, because it can often be very bitter cold, as anyone from Oklahoma knows at that time of the year. So they were looking for a warmer climate, and they had 4 places that they were looking at, one of which was Tucson. It was actually my Chamber of Commerce, local Chamber of Commerce, my Convention and Visitors Bureau, and myself that got busy working on putting together the bid for this. We flew out to Norman and actually attended one of the Winter Institutes that was occurring there. And then we arranged for them to come in for a site visit so that we could tour them through Tucson and the U of A campus and try to convince them. And the selection committee was made up of 8 different chamber executives from around the country, including the chamber executive from Norman, Oklahoma. So the one person who would most not want to see it leave her community was part of the selection committee, I'm sure as a very specific courtesy to make sure that that voice was heard in the process. And so we brought them in and toured them around. And the first night we were having dinner, and most of the people in the group were super excited. They were like, we love Tucson, we want to come to Tucson. It's like 70 degrees in Tucson in January, or sometimes even 75. They're like, we really want this to happen. We have a couple other sites. I think they were looking to place in Florida and a place in Northern Cal, if I remember correctly. But this individual from Norman, Oklahoma was dead set against it leaving Oklahoma at all. And Oklahoma was the 4th one that was submitting the bid for that. And so we were at dinner the first night, and I elected to sit down next to her, because I'm like, if there's anybody in this process I need to convince that this is a good idea, it's her. So I sat down, and as expected, I got a very cold reception to start with. So I had to keep at it and work with it to talk to her about, what was going on. And I was trying to just learn about her. Tell me about you, tell me about your experience, tell me about your past. And at one point she talked about how she was vegan. And that each day she needed around 10 o'clock, she needed to be able to have a snack, because since she wasn't eating some of the other carbs and the things that typically were not a part of her diet, she just needed this. And normally she would have a banana or something like that every day at 10 o'clock. And it was a little piece of information I filed away in my head and said, okay, I know what I'm going to do here. So what I did is the next day we brought them onto campus, and I said, all right, and we gave them a tour. And I had, before I left, I took a cooler with ice, and I put a banana. I'd gone to the store and bought a single banana and put it in that cooler, protected from the ice. And I carried it with me in my satchel. It's a small little lunchbox type cooler. And I set my pager, again, don't judge, this was like late 90s. I set my pager to go off at 10 a.m. So we were walking through one of the classroom facilities and my pager buzzed and I looked and it was 10 a.m. And without taking a break from my speech or walking, I reached into my bag, I pulled out the banana and I handed it off to her. And we just kept right on rolling. And when I did it, she gave me this look that I'll never forget, which was like, no one has ever really listened to me that clearly before in my life. And everybody in the group that knew about her behaviors kind of chuckled a little bit and laughed and all that. And we just went on with our day. But later that day, when we finished the tour and the conversation and the presentation, they met as a group alone in a private room and to make a decision about Tucson. And one of the things I remember one of the other chamber executives telling me after the search process was done was that in that room, she actually said that she couldn't believe it, but that she would vote for Tucson, Arizona over anything else because she knew that Joel would take care of her no matter what situation arose throughout the process. And we ended up landing the Winter Institute. It started in winter of 2000. And it is still being held in Tucson, Arizona after 21 years with no signs of stopping. And the accumulated net worth to the university in Tucson over that time, not economic impact wise, that would be bigger, has been about $15 million and counting because they keep coming. And so again, I use it, not trying to brag. It's a great story and it's fun for me to tell, but it's one of those things that took me a lot of getting used to. I can talk about what our facilities cost. I can talk about the physical attributes of those facilities. I can talk about the different spaces that we have and the food that we have and all that, but we often forget to talk about ourselves in the sales process. Again, if you're buying a widget at a store, you don't need to know much about the person that's selling it. If you're entering into a relationship for someone for what might be this was a $500,000 piece of business out of the gate. It's grown over time. Some of you I know plan, pieces of business or take pieces that are 7 figures. If you're going to give a piece of business to someone, you want to know that you can trust them. And so part of your sales process needs to be talking about who you are and how you will follow through and commit to serving them to the utmost of your ability. And we had bumps that first year, believe me. And people saw me working from like 6 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, running around doing everything that I could do to make sure that that group had the best experience possible. They came back, and they came back. And again, even after I moved on and left, they have been here for 21 years and counting. So again, let me stop and just see if there's any questions that have come in. Nope. All right, we'll keep right on rolling. All right, click back in here. All right, so now let's talk about the steps of the sales process. So there are classically kind of 5 steps to the sales process that you follow once you have someone that has expressed that level of interest. So as a venue, that's usually when someone contacts you for information and says, this is my group, this is what I want to do, these are the dates I'm looking at, let's engage and figure out what we do. So it's introduction, discovery, presentation, follow-up, and closing. Now, the introduction step is one of the most critical parts of it because I believe firmly that first impressions are lasting impressions. So if you don't respond well, if there is poor writing or grammar or whatever in the email that you sent out, if you don't get back to them quickly, like speed is key in this process. Because again, if something's happening on site and it needs to be addressed immediately, they want to know that you're going to get to it right away and not take all day to come back and solve their problem. We believe that you should get back to someone. You don't have to give them a full-blown, detailed proposal within 24 hours, but you need to respond. You need to give them maybe some basic info. Either, even if it's just, hey, yes, we can do it, or no, we can't, like we're already really booked during those dates, but if you're open to other dates, here's some windows, like within 24 hours. If possible, and no later than 72 hours, 3 business days after that initial contact. Because literally some of these groups will move that quickly on making a decision. Like they've done a lot of research, they have a sense. If you're one of the players and they've sent it to you and 4 others, those 4 others get back to them and you don't, and one of those 4 looks good, they're just going to move on. And you may never hear from them again at that point because they've made their decision and they're rolling. So you've got to be quick. You've got to be efficient, and any materials that you send them do need to be high quality, spell check, look professional, all those things, so that they recognize the place that you're coming from. You need to be confident about the product that you have and what you represent. So if you're selling a small performance venue in an urban center, or if you're selling a large campus environment, you need to know about it and you need to be confident in that. Again, sometimes I go on consults and I go to institutions and I'll walk into a room and I'll say, well, how many does this seat? And they'll be like, I don't know. And they'll be like, wait, let me look that up, right? You need to know every space you take a planner into exactly what it is you're going to tell them about it. You need to be confident in the approach that you're taking. Don't try to be somebody or something else. Like, you can't disguise your venue to be something that it's not. And I've tried that a couple times. I'm sure you all probably have as well, and it goes horribly. And the planner's upset and the attendees are upset and the satisfaction surveys are awful, and we all go, why did we do this? On both ends of the equation. It's not about the bill sometimes. So don't try to pretend that you can accommodate something that you can't, and let the sale unfold, right? It's all about building relationships. So you want to get back quickly, but it's not like you have to press them and say, and I need an answer tomorrow. You want to give this an opportunity. It'd be great if they come back and say, I love it, let's do it. But that almost never happens in that process. I think Corey and I can count on one hand between the two of us the times where someone took our initial pass and said, great, let's sign on the dotted line. It takes work to be able to do these things. The next step is discovery. This is where you try to then learn as much as you can about the organization, the event, the planner that's coming through the door. So this is where you break out Google search and you start looking up the group. You look at their past history and where they've been. You look for information about schedules and agendas and things like that. Maybe you go on LinkedIn and you learn about the planner. Again, I don't want anyone to feel like this is sneaky or underhanded. This is just a part of the process. You need to know who you're working with and you need to learn as much as you can about them. I always recommend that you check references. So if someone's bringing you a new group that you're not familiar with, ask around about them. If none are given, then ask the planner, the organizer, to give you some references. I made a really bad mistake one time where I had an open window and a piece of business that came in really late, like they called me in June for an event in July. I should have been suspicious for that. It was a group of like 600 education professionals, and they had said they had had a problem with some sort of a thing at the venue they were going to, the campus they were going to, with construction renovation. I should have called and asked, because they came in and they were one of the most horrible groups I've ever had to deal with out there. And even though they filled a window and they paid a nice bill, I would have given it all back, because they treated my staff poorly. They treated people across campus poorly. They trashed their rooms, and these were teachers. And the reason they didn't go to the campus, that I learned afterwards because I called, the reason they didn't get to go to the campus is because the year before they'd done that to that campus, and that campus had canceled on them, and they still believed in June that the campus was going to let them back in. When they finally said, no, we're really not doing it, they scrambled and they found me, and I unfortunately suffered through that. So it's important to do your discovery and check on stuff. Be organized. Like, don't do a lot of endless back and forth and go, oh, I just remember this. Like, sit down, go through their specs or go through the emails, make a list of everything that you need to know from that planner to give them the best response possible, and send it off. And try not to just constantly go, every time you think of something, saying, hey, can I know this? Or hey, can you do that? Be organized in it, and really listen to what you're hearing, whether you're talking or whether you're seeing it in writing. Listen, clarify if you're uncertain, and then make sure that you're addressing what it is that you're hearing. Like, put them in a box or figure out what their priorities are for their needs, and then focus on that in any information that you're going to feed back to them out there. Presentation. So using those 4 Ps and figuring out which one they're in, now try to organize your presentation to lead with that information and close again with that information. So again, it is okay to talk about yourself, to brag on what you're doing. But it's also important to make sure that you highlight up front if you think that they are physical attribute dependent, right? It's a wedding and you've got the world's most beautiful chapel or the most beautiful outdoor setting or whatever it is. I mean, definitely hammer that home. And then also talk about food and beverage and photography and music and whatever else is in there. But if you knew that they were just looking for the picture perfect backdrop, lead with that and close with that as a part of your presentation. Again, whether you're doing it in person and maybe it's a PowerPoint or Prezi, or whether you're sending them the materials, highlight the things that you know are most important to them and make sure your presentation addresses those things early and late with the other stuff in the middle. It's important to be thorough when necessary, brief as appropriate, professional throughout, and always complete in the information. So don't shortcut the process, but make sure that you also don't just throw a bunch of stuff in there that's not interesting. Measure and know when it is time to go in detail, when it's time to be brief. And finally, be honest. Again, don't try to tell someone you can do something if you really can't do it. Or if there's going to be challenges doing it, let them know we can do it, but here's the challenges with it. Because it's the dishonest salespeople, the ones that try to pull that stuff, that give the rest of us a bad name. I'm going to stop because I think, Corey, you might have had a question that came in.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but this is a pretty timely question. Lynn is wondering if you have any recommendations for phrasing when asking for references.
Sure. I think it's completely appropriate to ask someone for a reference in relation to, we would like to better understand your experience at another venue, what went well, what didn't go well, what we could help improve upon. Can we reach out and talk to a reference? Do you have a contact name or something like that? If someone tells you no, that's a red flag. Again, it doesn't mean you can't take their piece of business. I took pieces of business where it all went okay, but I had that one that was verbal that reminded me it's a really important part of the process. But I think if you couch it from wanting to learn from their past experience and improve upon or make sure that you can satisfy, that's another phrasing, is I want to make sure that I can satisfy you to the level that previous places have, or improve upon it based on the things that you told me why you might be leaving that venue. They know that you're probably also going to ask about payment history and group performance and different things like that, and that's fine. And all reputable planners out there will give you references if you ask, because they understand that they're doing the same thing, right? They're probably wanting to check in on how well do you do your business. And they've tried to talk to other planners in their networks to say, have you held an event at the U of A? And how did it go? And what was Joel like? And so it's part of the process to make sure that we both are establishing trust. Again, this is not buying a widget off of a store shelf. This is spending significant amounts of money and impacting hundreds of people's lives. And you want to make sure that it's the right relationship. So that's the way I would couch it. You don't need to necessarily say, I just want to check your payment history and whether you guys behave. It's more, I want to make sure I can serve you to the best of my ability. And I rarely have anyone say, oh no, that's a problem here, let me get you some. And again, oftentimes if you get that 10 or 12 or 15, those references are already going to be in there because they know that you're probably going to ask about it. Okay. Next piece of the step is to go with, the follow-up. No. Yeah, follow-up. A reminder that follow-up is 100% the responsibility of the seller. That's you. And I know that stinks because oftentimes, and we, anyone that's been in a sales role knows it. It's so frustrating when you engage with someone and it seems like everything's going well, and then they join the Federal Witness Protection Program and they don't return your calls or your emails and you never hear from them again and you go, what did I do? And it's not you. It's oftentimes just parts of the process, and some people don't like, just like some people don't like the uncomfortable part of selling, some people don't like the uncomfortable part of rejection. They don't like to tell someone, I'm sorry, you didn't get the bid, or I'm sorry, we're not coming there this year. And you can have great conversations and even build a relationship with someone, and they can still get to the point of saying, but you're not the right venue for me. And so you have to remember this is your responsibility, and you just have to keep at it and not take it personally if they don't respond and drop off into the witness protection program. But what you can do then is make sure that you use your follow-up time wisely so that if you do get them on the phone or if you do get that email response, that you can very quickly and aggressively say, okay, here's what I'm going to pitch to you, or here's the information that you asked for, or I've got 3 questions while we're on the phone. And what you also want to try to do in those conversations, either on the phone or in email, is ask questions that require a response. So, when will the board make a decision on the selection? Or when do you plan on getting back to us with a decision? Or when will you be able to provide us with it? Like, give them something. Don't just send info and say, hope to hear from you soon. Like, give them a question that spurs them to feel compelled to respond to you, because a lot of people don't like to intentionally ignore someone, but if you give them the easy out, they might do it. And remember that most salespeople quit, and I didn't have a chance to look at the results, or I'm not sure if they've come up yet or not, But most salespeople quit after 3 to 5 follow-up actions. Most sales are typically made, like these kinds of sales, in 8 to 10 follow-up actions. So it is a process, and you have to stick with it and not take it personally as you go. And then finally is the closing. This can often be the most difficult part of the sale because again, it's that final getting them to sign on the dotted line. And even after sometimes they tell you they've made the decision to come to your venue, they're still weighing some things in the background. Maybe they were secretly hoping one other venue was going to be a miracle and come through for them, or someone was going to give them a better deal or whatever it is. So they're kind of keeping you on the hook so you don't run off and book someone else, but they want to make sure that they are also keeping their options open. And so you've got to try to really once they say we're coming, or once they say we're signing on, you got to use windows and deadlines as much as possible. Sometimes that can be price oriented. Hey, you know what? I'm going to give you a 5% discount if you sign the contract by the end of this month. Or, hey, our pricing is going to change on April 1, and if you don't get this committed by then, there's going to be the next wave of prices. Whatever it is, you can use things to try to drive people to make that commitment and be done with it. Negotiation is always going to be an inevitable part of the process. So if you're one of those venues that like, this is just the way that we do it and this is the way that it is, that's fine. And there are people out there that will absolutely be okay with that, but there will be other groups that won't. And the question is are you willing to, again, take the airline approach and sell the seat to different people at different prices based on their needs and what their comfort is with that specific purchase price that they pay at the time that they pay it. But the important part of the negotiation, because maybe like if you were like me, like I was the manager, but sometimes some of these decisions had to go to a higher level manager or to another partner on campus that was doing this. So I needed to know my options and what my limits were. Like I couldn't promise someone, but I remember I got to a point after a couple of years, like the dining manager on campus, we were a one-stop shop in that I represented everyone, but we didn't control all of that. But the dining manager got to a point, he said, you know what, Joel, I trust any deal you make. If you've made it, I know it's going to be a good deal, which was a great day for me because it meant I had flexibility in talking about food service and catering and trying to use that as a piece of space and bed nights and different things to put together a package that was attractive. And oftentimes I would give up a little bit on my side when I was asking someone to give up a little bit on theirs. But don't give the farm away. Remember, you have a good product. You have confidence in it. So you want to make sure that you are creative and you find other workarounds. Again, the perks that the dealers throw in. Sometimes it's not about lowering the price. Sometimes it's about maybe saying, hey, you know what, we're going to do turn down service for you while you're here. I actually did that for a couple of groups that were staying in the residence halls. They came back from their big banquet and we had turned down their beds and left mints on the pillows. And we got great comments from people who never expected that in our environment. But there are creative ways, things we can updo. We did upgraded centerpieces. We had a chef that did ice sculptures in our kitchen. And so he would do ice sculptures as the centerpiece and we wouldn't charge extra for that. So there are things you can do to bring value to it that don't make you just necessarily break it all on price. You need to document everything and submit for signature as soon as possible. And then remember that closing that sale is the very first step simply in serving the customer, right? So you've traveled this whole journey with them to get to this point, and it's really only the beginning. So even though you can take a deep breath and go, okay, no more awkward sales conversations, now you get yourself ready to say, now I have to deliver on everything that I committed to. And again, this is where if you have an organization that's large enough to have a dedicated salesperson and a dedicated ops team, just like marketing and sales have to work together, sales and operations have to work together. And so you need to not be committing to things that your ops team can't deliver. You need to be including them in those conversations. And you need to, once a sale is made, if you're going to transition someone and say, now our ops team is going to take care of you, a lot of hotels work this way. You need to have a meeting or you need to make sure there's an interaction where you physically transfer that relationship that they built with you to the next person. You need to instill confidence in how that person is going to take care of them and serve them and make sure everything works out okay. And you need to not then just disappear yourself. You need to maybe check in once or twice before the event happens, or you need to maybe pop by once during the thing. Again, not to set up tables and chairs, not to, help pull off the logistics, but just to check in with that meeting planner, that organizer, and say, hey, just checking in on you. Because again, you may have only booked it for one time, but they may come back and say, hey, I really enjoyed my experience. They want to do it again. So you're always going to keep reinforcing that sales message. If we're here for you, we can accommodate you, and we'll take care of you throughout. So that's really the extent of it. So just wrapping up really quickly, and then we probably have time for a couple questions if there's any out there. Just remember, marketing and sales are very different concepts. And again, if you are both of those things within your organization, you've got to dedicate time to enhancing skills in each. And again, marketing's easier. There's lots you can find, lots of webinars. We run lots of them here at Unique Venues. Sales is one of those areas that's harder, but you need to dedicate time to beefing it up. And again, I have found that developing a model to think through the sales process and applying it over and over was one of the ways that helped me really become much better at the sales activities of my job, to where I was recognizing it almost as a challenge when that thing came in as to how quick can I get the initial response back, and how quickly can I discover which box they fit into, and then how can I tailor this response to have the best chance of them saying yes to it at the end of the day. And again, if that means me eating my ego and not bragging on our newly renovated residence halls because they really don't care, then I leave it out and I go with what is most important to them. And I encourage you to whether this works for you or whether spend some time thinking about your sales process and develop a model that works for you, and implement it and refine it and evaluate it, and come back around and find something that will make it easier for you to tackle the sales part of your job if that's a difficult thing or an uncomfortable thing for you to do right now. And finally, just learn from your experiences. Like, some of these are not going to go well. Sometimes you're going to get into it and it's going to go sideways. Sometimes people will disappear. Sometimes it just won't work out. You're going to get outbid, or people have a better product to offer. That's okay. It's not personal. It wasn't you specifically. Learn from that. I always used to call someone when I didn't get the bid and say, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time and just tell me why it is that I didn't get the bid? Just open, honest, what was it? Sometimes it was straightforward. It was like, look, your prices are just too high, or your facilities weren't big enough, or whatever it is. That's easy. Sometimes it was, hey, we're really worried about the weather, or we weren't sure that the food service people were really up to snuff, because when we were there trying the food, it wasn't everything. I mean, those things, you don't want to hear them, but you need to hear them, because then you can work with your teams and you can make sure things are better the next time around. So make sure you look at each sale as a learning opportunity, and you adjust and refine your model moving forward. And with that, I will look over at Corey and say, are there any more questions that have trickled in?
Yeah, we've got a great question here. And obviously during the time of COVID, Alan's wondering if there's any advice on how to incorporate COVID-19 changes into this process, especially if you have leads contacting you and it is currently unclear when you will be able to reopen your venues.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and one that has come up a lot in a lot of our different settings. So I think there's a couple things that have to happen. One, remember we talked about being honest. And so I think in any engagements that you're doing right now, there just needs to be kind of an honest, upfront conversation about the fact that you don't know for sure. Like, if someone wants to book in October, I'm guessing most people know that's probably not going to happen right now at most of the venues out there that we work with. Gatherings of 50 people or 100 people are usually phase 3 or more of some of the reopening plans, and we're not there yet. Or some people have said we're just going to hold at this level through the end of the year. And again, it stinks, but it's part of the world that we live in right now. So I think we just need to acknowledge that with any sales interaction right now, there is a level of uncertainty on both parts, right? So from the venue side, we need to say, hey, we're thinking we might be able to start booking again in March 2021, but we'll have to wait and see. So let's just go into this knowing that it's tentative or whatever, but it's also tentative on your side, because as a group, you might not be able to bring your participants in from around the country or internationally or wherever they're coming from in March as well. And so we're going to remain open and flexible. So I think the second thing to incorporate then is some of that notion of the performance, like how you deliver your service. Right now, COVID-19 is a part of your performance package. So what is it that you're going to do to monitor and adjust to the situation? How have you implemented social distancing guidelines? Have you reviewed your spaces? You now know what the new capacities are. So again, if someone wants to bring 100 people in. You know, your ballroom space that seats 275 can actually accommodate that with social distancing, or 375 or whatever the number is. What steps have your food and beverage taken to meet, you know, the new guidelines? Are you prepackaging things? Have you eliminated buffets until future notice? Again, kind of going through and laying out for someone from a performance perspective all the ways in which you are addressing COVID-19 both now and the uncertainty. So your contract clauses have changed. People have easier outs. Maybe you're not taking deposits up front right now. Whatever it is that you've addressed there. And then during events when they start to resume, it will demonstrate to someone that, again, you're paying attention to this. You're not just winging it. There's a lot of thought and effort and work that's gone into it. And you can deliver on a meeting or event at whatever time you finally are able to say, we can now book you with confidence and put you in here and bring you to our venue. Any other questions? I think I saw another one trickle in.
Yeah, I'm gonna type my response, but I'm interested to hear yours, Joel. If you shook your glass crystal ball right now, and you know, when will things bounce back? What's your gut tell you?
Oh boy, that's the scary one to answer. But I'm gonna do you all a solid, like I've been saying all along, and be honest. I really feel at this point, given what we're seeing going on around the country and the world, that I'll talk to my campus venues for just a second. Campus venues that are hoping summer conferences are going to be in full swing next summer, I'm not thinking that's going to be the case. I'm optimistic that maybe smaller events or some things will happen, or more importantly, maybe some individual housing, whether you can do interns or whether you can do, again, not everybody has the ability to do residential stays. A lot of Canadian venues can do that and probably are doing well right now, and will hopefully continue that throughout the next year. But trying to find smaller things or things you can fit in, I still worry that bringing 5,000 to a campus for 5 days next summer is going to be a really difficult thing to think, either because the restrictions are saying we can, or because consumer confidence is not quite back yet. And we have a long ways to go to there, so I hope I'm wrong looking into my crystal ball. But for all venues, I really think we're not going to start to see an uptick until the first quarter of 2021, in terms of maybe having people finally say we can book with confidence, and that might be summer or fall of 2021 before some of those confidence propositions really are executed out there. So I'll be interested, Corey, to see what you wrote in the box. But I know when we interviewed everyone that attended the expert panel last week, one of the questions that were a week and a half ago, one of the questions we asked was, when would you personally feel comfortable attending an event of 250 or less? And most people were saying January 2021, or really spring 2021 or later. And that had actually shifted by about 13 or 14% from the previous month when we asked it. So I think we're all kind of starting to look in our own crystal balls and seeing that for the rest of this year, it's difficult. And I hate to say it, because obviously it's difficult for us here too, because we're all joined together, marketing and sales, right? We're your marketing partner. You're out there selling your venues. We're joined together in this, and eventually it's going to come around. But I do worry that it's going to be a little bit later into 2021, not just start right off bang at the beginning of the year with stuff happening in January, February. So there you go, as honest as I could be. One last question, and then we'll do our wrap up, because I know we're a couple minutes past time here.
Just nothing in the queue.
Okay. All right. Okay. Those are probably just people saying thank you. So yeah. Let me click to my last slide here and just remind everyone that we have more that are coming up. So we have Business Essentials on July 7th, which is going to be Chuck Salem talking about customer service, developing a customer service philosophy for your venue, your program, your organization. And then the last Business Essentials is on July 29th. Dr. Michael Brown will be talking about strategic planning. So there's the next two in our Business Essentials. Again, things that hopefully right now are things that you could be focused on. Again, we know a lot of people are furloughed, or some people are experiencing closures or things like that. But for those of you that are out there, hopefully you'd have some time to focus on some higher level strategies and activities. We have our member group therapies, an all venue one on July 8th. We're going to try one on the 21st and 23rd for day only venues versus overnight venues, because I know sometimes there's different issues that they have. And finally, our two more, our virtual hybrid meeting part 3 is on July 9th. So if you've attended the first 2, you won't want to miss this one. We're actually going to execute the meeting from the Attune site in Chicago, as well as all of us tuning in virtually. Chuck is planning, provided the travel restrictions and all that allow, to head there next week for the meeting there. And then finally, our next industry expert panel is in July 22nd. Chuck's working on the lineup for that this week, and we should hopefully be able to announce that as we send out the July newsletter. So again, I want to thank everyone very much for attending our webinar today. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully you found some value in this, and we look forward to seeing you on a future Unique Venues webinar. Everyone have a great rest of their afternoon.
Thanks,
everyone.